a couple of weeks, have you seen evidence that you have a stronger and more well-conditioned team?
Absolutely. Just when you watch our football team, just from a visible standpoint, much bigger in muscle mass, much more explosive. I think we're a faster football team. Obviously, we have to get some individuals back, which we will this week, but they've had a very, very good offseason. We've really kind of continued that trend, Jimmy, in terms of lifting. We've lifted more than we have in the past in terms of training camp, and I think that's going to be critical for this young football team as we can continue to develop our strength levels as the season continues on as well, and we have to be a stronger football team at the end of the year as well.
Follow up on that, why have you lifted more during the game?
I think it's just where our football team is. We have a lot of young players. We're going to rely on a lot of youngsters. I think just the overall development. Our players have done a great job of embracing the strength and conditioning area. I think they understand, from terms of hydration, nutrition, continued in the weight room, all those things that are associated with, being a championship program, the championship team, and those championship habits, which we speak about on a daily basis.
Austin.
Butch, can you talk about Brett Kendrick? You talk about toughness. He seems like one that's gotten progressively tougher from when he was here as a redshirt freshman all the way to now.
Tell you, Brett's come a long way, and really appreciate everything that he's brought to the table. It's been fun to watch his continued growth and development. And you're right, he's one of those individuals that has battled through some injuries and keeps coming back, and it's very important to him. And he's an individual who's really increased his strength and has really taken advantage of the weight room, but just his perseverance, his resolve, his toughness that he's displayed, we've needed that.
John.
Butch, when you decided to use Evan Perry as a kick returner, do you remember how that came about? Was it what you saw from him in high school, or was something he did here? How did that happen?
Yeah, kind of an evolution. He was a high school running back, and so he was gifted with the ball in his hands, and just like any freshman coming in, the first thing we do, can they catch kickoffs and can they catch punts, and kind of try out. And then we're doing this all the time. We usually start practice with a live kickoff versus kickoff return, and every time he was back there, he had the natural instincts that great returners possess. He has an innate ability to hit it, and really kickoff return is the equivalent of a run play on offense. And for him, there's also a technique involved. That really, we talk about catching the ball, moving forward, and stealing 5 yards. And obviously, he's been a weapon for us, and we're excited to have him back. And he takes his job very seriously. The players, when he goes back there, everyone expects something good to happen. But again, he just has that unique instincts in terms of what great returners have.
Steve.
Just wondering, based on what happened last year, how would you kind of change your personal approach at honesty? Primarily, catchphrases, slogans you use. They got some criticism last year, 5-star.
Well,
Are you going to change that, or are you still going to use?
Well, I invite you. I kind of chuckle because I've educated some of the members of our local media that every coach has those. And for some reason at Tennessee, I think it's all kind of blown out of proportion because that's the one topic to talk about. But I think there's an NFL team that's using brick by brick. I think there's another college football team that's using Own It. Every football program has those. It's a way to get the attention of your program. So we haven't been any different. I think it's been grossly over talked about, and again, it's something that relatability. Ours is that way: details, accountability, and toughness. But I think if you do your research around the country, every football program has to have something that they're going to hang their hat on, whether it's in times of where you need perseverance, where it's times you need to focus your football team, and it really just exemplifies what that current football team needs. So nothing has really changed with what we're doing.
Butch,
I'm glad you asked that question.
Butch, you've talked a lot about obviously getting into training camp mode. After going through 2 or 3 weeks of this, do you like the new rules where there's no two-a-days and the mandatory days off? You got to get completely away from football. Do you think that's good for the team development, or do you think you wish it was a little more old school, where you were more the two-a-days, kind of grinded out type stuff?
You know, good question. I don't really think it's really changed the dynamics that much. If you look back, I believe we only had a fewer days last year. So really, the true two-a-days and three-a-days, those have really been the thing of the past for a number of years, particularly for us. So I don't see that much of a change. Again, everything is about the welfare of our student athletes. I think that the off day has been good for them. They have the ability to break away, but also they have to have the maturity with a full day off, because what happens is your body gets used to a certain routine. You get used to getting up at a certain moment in time. Your body gets used to all those things. And then when you completely shut the body down for 24 hours, you know, there takes some mental toughness involved to, hey, come back and let's go. But I think it's been healthy. I think it's been good for us. I think our players have enjoyed it. So I do. I think it's been good for us. The bigger thing is getting out of summer school. We have the most missed days of any school in our conference in terms of summer school. So for us now, we're really kind of a week behind in terms of training camp and the training camp structure. That's why we have to rely on the maturity of our football team, the leadership of our football team, and that's why every day has to be counted. We have to make every day count, because we are a little bit behind in just an overall terms of a structure of training camp.
Grant.
But you mentioned not skipping steps. Do you think that's been a problem in the past, or if not, where does that emphasis come from?
No, I don't think it's been where we've lacked that. I believe we started 5-0 last year. I don't think that. I think every team is different, though. You know, every team that's a 30-year roster changes. That's what makes college football challenging and rewarding at the same time. But you can never assume anything. And the growth and development of a football team, you have to start from ground zero. And, a lot of times, you want to go from point A to point D, and that's, I guess, where, we've talked about trust the process, follow the process, and you got to go from A to B to C, and you have to work your way up. And, a lot of times as young players, you struggle a little bit, and you want to be already made. And, there's a process, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's been in summer school. So the big thing for us, again, is you can't skip steps. That means every practice has a count. Every rep is invaluable for learning and from a physical standpoint and everything that's associated with that.
In the back of the blue.
Coach, you talked about toughness, and with this off-season conditioning program and everything, are you seeing a lot more aggressiveness out of your program, a lot more toughness as a result? And if so, are you seeing it up front?
Yeah. Another good question, and I'll tell you this, is toughness is a broad-based term. There's so much that goes into toughness. To me, it starts mentally. The mental conditioning with everything we talk about. If you're not mentally tough and mentally conditioned, there's no way you can be physically tough on a football field. And it starts with every player owning their conditioning. A football play lasts 4 to 6 seconds long. And our expectation is to play for 6 seconds and give 3 great efforts. So there's a mentality that goes along with it, but if you're not in great football condition, there's no way you can play through that. So it starts from a mental standpoint, and obviously a physical standpoint as well, and that's where training camp is critical, because it teaches you resolve and perseverance and to grind through. And then I think you have to practice tough to be able to play tough on Saturdays, and we're always going to take care of our players, but it's our players' understanding of these certain periods we have to go. And you can always work on toughness, even in your individual drills, whether it's fitting up a form tackle, whether it's getting off a block, whether it's working on breaking a tackle. And that's something that we pride ourselves in. Also, I think the weight room and the strength is also a byproduct of toughness. So it's a broader term. But I thought last night we displayed some toughness. I thought, a lot went into that. I think the other form of toughness is playing with leverage and pad level. And right now, we're too high of a football team. I told our staff this, I told our team this morning, is we got to work and get our pad level down. And so again, pad level and leverage is a byproduct of toughness as well. It's ongoing, but I like what I've seen so far.
David.
Yeah, Butch, was curious what you like about John Gordon's book, The Power of Positive Leadership, and what led you to recommend that book to the commission?
Well, as you know, I'm a big John Gordon fan, and you know, in today's world, like I said, you know, we're getting older, but the audience that we have to relate to never gets older. They stay 17 and 22 years old. And I think John has a unique way of putting things in perspective. And, you know, there's so many things, even how the narrative is told. And, you know, a lot of people want to tell a negative narrative, where if you really peel back some layers, there's a lot of positive narrative. So I think just the overall approach, you know, how you talk to players, how you encourage, but also how you demand and how you motivate. And I think Rock Gullickson is a great example of that. It's our players are motivated every single time they go in the weight room. But I just think you can take so much from that. And I know a lot of coaches have read that book.
Mike?
Yeah, Larry Scott touched on a little bit as far as paring things down. I know earlier you said there were some drops, and Larry pointed out there's been a lot of different players getting opportunities. How quickly do you pare it down and start working towards a depth chart?
Well, that's where this week will be imperative. We'll have another scrimmage, so to speak, on Wednesday, and that was my point to our football team today, is every rep is invaluable. We're putting our identity on video, and not just in terms of offense and defense, but also in terms of special teams. And we're doing a lot of live repetitions right now, trying to find out our special teams organizational charts as well. And so every day they come in, they're competing for playing time, whether it's in the meeting rooms, whether it's in a walkthrough through their communication, whether it's on the practice field, or really the focus. You know, are you a focused individual every single day you come into the meetings? And again, making the meetings interactive, but also being able to answer questions on the spot. So this week is going to tell us a lot, and there's some very, very competitive battles going on. I think when we get some individuals back on Monday and Tuesday, that will help that as well. And we have to continue to compete, but the sense of urgency with our football team has to pick up this week.
To follow up, you mentioned last night you saw toughest. Did you determine that you would scrimmage? Is that what happened in this game?
More situational football than just a full-out scrimmage. We'll do that early this week, but I thought where our football team was at this particular moment in time, we still need to focus on the fundamentals, the details, communication, being able to line up, being able to demand, you know, all those things that go into that. So we did play some situational football and all that, but also it was a practice as well. And we needed it for special teams as well, just the fundamentals that go into special teams.
In the Navy hand?
Chuck.
Chuck?
Chuck, how you doing?
I'm 63 tomorrow and surgery on Thursday. Out of the players, third strings, players that were afterthoughts the past couple of years, and Elliott Berry, any surprises?
Well, I think all those individuals have continued to grow and develop, and a lot of those individuals, including Elliott, really gained some valuable playing time last year, not just, you know, on one side of the ball or the other, but also in the special teams game. And when you have some playing time and you get that game rep experience, there's no substitute for that. And I think that also builds confidence. And I know Elliott's had a very, very good camp. We've been very, very pleased with him and all the individuals. And, you know, when we talk about never assuming and no two teams are ever the same, and I think that's also the evolution of a lot of players is, you know, some players were role players last year, and you win with role players. But now with graduation and them being a year older in your program, their role expands, and now they go from maybe a role player to a full-time player on offense or defense, and there's an expectation that comes with that. And we have very high standards and expectations by which we're going to play here on all three sides, offense, defense, special teams. And there's an onus on that with every individual, and it starts with us as coaches. But I've been pleased with all the individuals that have gained those repetitions, and you can see that experience paying off in practice right now.
Jesse?
Okay, we're 15 minutes in. We haven't talked. No one's asked a quarterback question yet. obviously there's a lot of assumptions that both will play against Georgia Tech, but what are you kind of hoping to see out of each of those guys individually over these next 2 weeks that kind of help you determine when you do have to make that decision, who the guy will be, going forward?
Well, like we spoke about earlier, I don't ever believe in setting timetables. When it manifests and when it happens, it happens. But again, I see both individuals competing exceptionally hard. And I thought Jarrett Garantano probably had the best practice he's had last night. I liked his command of the offense, liked what he brought to the table. And Quint has been very consistent day in and day out. So I see both those individuals getting better and better. Now, the mark of good players is they elevate the play of others around them. And I want to see our quarterback step up and elevate the play of others around them, have a command presence about themselves. We videotape everything they do, from the way they run from drill to drill, the way they interact. We call it a quarterback leadership camera. And we evaluate them as well as how do they interact with their teammates. I watch who they sit with at training table. Are they getting around other factions of the team and the offensive line, the running backs, the tight ends? And that's what I spoke to them is being a quarterback, there's so many demands that go into it. It's much more than just on the field. There's so much off the field. And so what are you doing also off the field in terms of being around your teammates, getting to know everyone? And that's when you build your trust amongst your peers. But I've been very pleased. And I said it a few days ago, unfortunately, Jarrett had to miss a practice, but the reps that Will McBride received as the number 3 quarterback, and that was eye-opening for him is, hey, Will, all the talk is about Quentin and Jarrett, but you're 1 snap away from being number 2, and you're 2 snaps away from being the starting quarterback at Tennessee. So the reps that he was able to gain in some team situations, I think, was very important for him as well.
No timetable, but obviously, if you had to make a decision tomorrow, it's fair to say that you wouldn't have one then, right? Because you haven't made one, right?
Have not made one.
Okay.
In the back.
How was Jonathan around the playoff versus
I tell you what, you talk about a young man that's matured, and we always talk about really college football is a race to maturity. When you come in here, what players grow and mature at the rates to be able to play winning football and do everything that they need to do in the community, in the classroom. And Jonathan has grown leaps and bounds. Completely different person, completely different perspective, has worked very hard. I think, coming in here, the expectations were probably a little bit unfairly placed upon him. And, it takes a while. But he has worked as hard as anyone we've had in training camp, in the off season, in the strength and conditioning room. He's vocal. He hasn't missed a practice. And I think also when you start to build a football program, and when your younger players can learn from the older players around them, like a Derek Barnett, a Corey Vereen, a LaTroy Lewis, that helps them. And I think Jonathan saw what those individuals brought to the table, and he's trying to pick up for them. But I've been really excited about him. He's done a really nice job. Sorry? For him, he just has to focus on winning the day. Just continue to get better every day, and again, not skip a step. And that may sound kind of crazy, but it really is. When you start thinking about the outcomes, you start to put added stress and pressure on yourself instead of just focusing on winning that day, winning that play, winning that rep in the weight room. That's all we ask of our players.
Patrick, but you've had Juwan in your program for a couple of years now. How have you kind of learned to, I don't want to say manage, but kind of interact with his personality and his competitiveness, and do you think he's ready to kind of be a number 1 receiver for your offense? I
do think Juwan's ready to be a number 1 receiver. And I sat in the receiver meetings today, and he has grown leaps and bounds in all areas of his life. And when you sit in there, the way he's talking to our freshmen and our younger players, the way he's mentoring, we always talk about football intelligence, and he's studied the game, and he's learned the game. And I told him, you've come a long way, and I had him talk to our freshmen. Tell us about, how far you've come. How did you get to where you're at now? Talk about your investment in your time. you know, he was allergic to the weight room. And now he loves the weight room. And I think he sees the results of it. As we all know, he's as competitive as anyone we have on this football team. I wouldn't go to battle with anyone but him in terms of, I wouldn't trade him for anybody. Game day, I know what he's going to bring to the table. It's been getting to game day, you know, understanding the importance of practice reps and working your craft and all the things that are associated with driven players and great players. And I've been very, very pleased with him. He's another individual along, as we just talked about Jonathan Combo. Juwan's come a long way.
We only have time for a couple more, John and Jimmy.
Butch, do you think the linebacker position is a lot more difficult than it was 20 years ago?
Yes. There's so much that goes into that position now. I think, first of all, it's a speed game. It's an athleticism game. I think all the different schemes, you know, where it used to be 21 personnel and line up and you were getting ISO and you kind of knew what you were getting formationally, and the play was really kind of restricted to the box from tackle. Now, with the evolution of spread offenses, with RPOs, all those things with eye discipline, there's so much that has changed from that position. But there's some things, John, still that have not changed about that position. And that's the toughness that's required, the football intelligence. You're really the quarterback of the defense. You know, the ability to get off blocks and take on blocks. But I think the ability to run sideline to sideline, the ability to cover backs out of the backfield, go man and coverage, the different schemes. We talked about that in the team meeting the other night. Is back in the days when we played, you really had one front or two fronts and maybe two coverages. Now today we ask them to have vision coverage, we ask them to have match coverage, all different zone type pressures, all different man type pressures. So you have to be a complete player in today's world to play linebacker.
Jimmy, last question.
What's your confidence level in Aaron Medley, and would you anticipate trying more 50, 55-yard field goals this year?
Have great confidence in Aaron. I think Aaron has really, really picked it up in camp. I do think that's a byproduct. He's in a competitive battle. It's one of those positions that's still up in the air, that he's competing every single day and he's being pushed by a true freshman, and that's healthy. I think that's really elevated Aaron's play, not only from a field goal standpoint, but also from a kickoff standpoint, and from accuracy of where we want the ball put in the box, to hang time, to all those things associated with it. So he's in a very competitive battle, but I like the way he's competing. He's becoming more consistent. Aaron's thing is the longer field goals, and I think it's more just he can do it. He has a leg strength. I believe in him. And again, I'll know a little bit more in the next week of where we're at in terms of accuracy. Everything's charted. Everything we try to put them in game type situations. And when you're a football team like this, when I say you can't skip steps in the maturity of a football team, you have to try to have the adrenaline rush. You got to try to mimic game day every single day. And that's the only way, you know, when you talk about, well, I'll feel it on game day, that never happens. You know, your performance on game day is a byproduct of how you prepare throughout the course of the week. So your training has to mimic game speed repetitions and try to mimic the adrenaline that's associated with game day, and that's a challenge. And that gets back to a race of maturity. You can't survive. And a lot of times as younger players, you just kind of survive the down, you just kind of survive training camp, and you forget the messaging, you forget the teaching and the coaching that's going on. And that's why, you know, you have to rely on your veteran players to do that. But again, I've liked the competitive battle of the kicking situation right now.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you.